students. I hope you enjoyed your 4th of July holiday. We're going to start on World War I. Now, although this is an American History 2 course, we have to understand what was going on in Europe before we dive into the American entry into World War I. I use an acronym. It's MAIN, which stands for Militarism, Alliances, Imperialism, and Nationalism. And I'll explain those as we go along. Now, militarism means build up in your military. You're more provoked to settle issues militarily than diplomatically. The alliance system, which occurred in Europe in the late 19th century, specifically with Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. Germany, Austria, and Austria-Hungary signed a non-belligerent treaty agreement between them in 1878, and then Italy entered the agreement a little bit later in 1882. The Triple Alliance, as it would later become known, was, like I said, a non-belligerent treaty, which means that if Germany were attacked, then Austria, Hungary, and Italy would have to come to her defense as signatories of that treaty. But if Austria, Hungary, Germany, or Italy were the aggressor, they are not obligated to go to war. So, on the other side, you have Great Britain, France, and Russia. Now, Russia was seen as the big brother of all the Slav peoples in Eastern Europe. And that's very important when we start to talk about Serbian nationalism. The Serbians were ruled by the Austro-Hungarians, and they wanted their own separate country. And the only way they felt they could get it is through acts of violence. The head of Russia, like I said, was Nicholas II, who was a cousin of George V, and so was Kaiser Wilhelm. He was the cousin of George V. Now, with all these things going on, we have the militarism of Germany and Great Britain. Now, Germany and Great Britain were in a naval race to see who could have the better navy. The French army had just been rebuilt after the Franco-Prussian War in 1870-71, where they lost to the Germans, as a matter of fact. So the Germans and the French had a little score to settle with each other. And the alliance system, which I just explained to you, was a problem, because if you are a member of the Triple Alliance and then you want to join the Triple Entente, which was the Allies alliance, then you're out of luck, because then you're going to be seen as a traitor. And of course, imperialism, and I'm going to show you a map a little bit later. All of these European countries had colonies all over the world. That's imperialism, where they're trying to spread their type of government to other parts of the world. And of course, then there's nationalism. Well, nationalism comes into play when I talked about the Serbian nationalism, wanting them to break away from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And then there's the nationalism of the Germans and the French. They stand very proud. That goes hand in hand with the militarism. So let's go ahead and start with the presentation, and I will show you the World War I actually started in 1914 to 1918. And if we look at, there's differing viewpoints that have to do with World War I, family feud. Like I said, Kaiser Wilhelm, Nicholas II, and George V of Great Britain were members of the same family. The war to end all wars. Well, when the war started, it was a 20th century conflict with 19th century tactics, and they thought that this was going to war to end all wars. However, when you take into account the new innovations that they made in machine guns, artillery, poison gas, things of that nature, medical science on the battlefield, it took a long time to catch up, so a lot of people died. So let's just go right and start with, I'll tell you how we went over the causes. We actually talked about the alliance system, and then later on we would see Turkey join the Central Powers. So these are your teams set out basically. If it were a football game, you have the Allied powers, Great Britain, France, and Russia. Later on, Italy would join the Allied powers and break with their treaty with the Central Powers. And on the Central Power side, you have Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey. So we've got George V of Britain, Nicholas II of Russia, Victor Emmanuel of Italy, and President Poincaré of France. On the Central Powers, you have Wilhelm II, Enver Pasha of Turkey, who would be later considered a national hero and named Ataturk. And then you have Franz Joseph. Well, Franz Joseph was in his 80s when the war started, and he likened himself to the old school politicians of the 80s, where, I mean, of the 18th century, where you need to be ruled by power. So here is a map of Europe in 1914. You notice the countries in green are the Central Powers, and France is in tan, Great Britain is tan, and Russia is tan. Germany signed the alliances, the Triple Alliance, because she felt that she was being surrounded. And Great Britain knew that Germany was trying to build a navy. So what they did was each country in Europe actually increased its military expenditures to build ships, to arm their soldiers, and it wound up becoming just a technological war with men operating the equipment. And unfortunately, it took its death toll later on in the war. This is a map that talks about imperialism, and if you look at the map, you'll see the Entente powers in dark green, and then you see the Central Powers in tan. Well, they have colonies all over the world. This would be the first world conflict, the first great world conflict. Now, that's the sign of imperialism. If you move on to nationalism, like I said, Russia was the Slavic protector. Germany was concerned about being strangled in her borders, so she got a comparable people to join her, Austria-Hungary. They were always friends. And then France saw that she was alone on the western side of the continent, so she went to Great Britain. Now, how does the war start? Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the nephew of Franz Joseph in Austria-Hungary, was planning a trip to Sarajevo, Bosnia, on the 28th of June to watch some sort of combat maneuvers. There was a group of assassins that wanted to make a point. They wanted to make a statement. Serbian assassins, remember Serbian nationalism in Eastern Europe, wanted their own country. They felt that the only way they could break away was through violence, and there was a group called the Black Hand. And it was a group of 6 young men from anywhere from 18 to about 24 years old. One of them was named Gavrilo Princip. Now, Gavrilo Princip had tuberculosis, okay? And this is Gavrilo Princip right here. And he was one of the assassins that went to Sarajevo on the 28th of June to kill the Archduke. Now, what happens is the Archduke and his wife, Sophia, who were there, were, like I said, they were there to inspect the maneuvers that were going on with the Austro-Hungarian army, and they went in a car parade, car cavalcade, whatever, and they were traveling through the city, and they were headed for City Hall. Before they got to City Hall, one of the 6 assassins threw a bomb at the car, but it bounced off and exploded and injured 2 people in the car behind the Archduke. When the Archduke and his wife got to the Sarajevo City Hall, the mayor, who was nervous, came out, made an announcement, and the Archduke stopped him halfway and said, "How do you expect me to go on with stately duties if people in your city are going to throw bombs at me?" He goes in, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie go in, the Archduchess go into the City Hall, and when they come out, they get in the car. They travel along this route, and the driver gets lost. Well, Gavrilo Princip hears about the bomb going off, and it was unsuccessful. So he goes to the corner of Franz Josef Strasse, and he gets, a sandwich. Goes in, gets a sandwich, comes outside, and the driver of the Archduke's car makes a wrong turn and winds up right smack in front of Gavrilo Princip. Well, Gavrilo Princip hurriedly drops his sandwich, pulls out not a revolver, but a pistol, automatic pistol, and fires 2 shots. He catches the Archduke near the jugular vein, and he catches Archduchess in the thigh, severing the femoral artery, and she bled to death in 30 seconds. Well, when someone asked him, when he saw blood coming out of his mouth, someone asked him, "Are you all right?" He said, "Oh, it's nothing." And he turned to his wife and he said, "Sophie, Sophie, you can't die. You must stay alive for the children." The Archduke and the Archduchess died on the way to the hospital. Now, Austria-Hungary had been looking for a way to suppress the Serbian nationalism, and this was the way they could do it. Franz talks to Germany, and Kaiser Wilhelm says, "You have a blank check. You can do whatever you want. We'll back you 100%. What happens is the Austro-Hungarian government under Emperor Franz Joseph offers the Serbians an ultimatum. And that ultimatum is, cut your stuff, quit trying to be a separate nation, give us the people that were responsible for the assassination of the Archduke, and we'll just, we won't go to war." Well, Serbia gets the ultimatum and agrees to everything. But the Austro-Hungarian foreign minister was given instructions specifically, no matter what they do, don't accept the ultimatum. So what eventually happens over the course of a month is on July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Now remember, I said that Russia was the older brother of the Serbs and all the Slavic people in Eastern Europe. So Russia now feels compelled to declare war against Austria-Hungary. Well, then this triggers the Triple Alliance, and Germany and Russia declare war on each other on August 1st, 1914. And then on August 3rd, because France is a signatory to the Triple Entente, they declare war on Germany, and Germany declares war on France. They were just itching for this. On the 4th of August, Germany declares war on Belgium, and then the United Kingdom declares war on Germany. Great Britain is compelled to actually declare war on Germany because of the simple fact that they are a signatory of the Triple Entente. And then on August 12th, the United Kingdom and France declare war on Austria-Hungary. Now, Austria-Hungary declares war on Belgium. Japan declares war on Germany on the 23rd of August. Japan declares war on Austria-Hungary. And Austria-Hungary declares war on Belgium on August 28th. November 2nd, Russia and Serbia declare war on the Ottoman Empire. And November 5th, United Kingdom and France declare war on the Ottoman Empire. Now, why Japan? Well, you got to remember the imperialism. The Germans and the British actually had colonies in the East. Germany had a naval base at Tsingtao in China, and Japan kind of felt like it was a war based upon race. And this would come into effect later, the Treaty of Versailles. Now, what did the Germans have planned? Well, the Germans didn't think the war was going to last that long. In fact, they had come up with a plan called the Schlieffen Plan, named after their German Chief of Staff, Alfred von Schlieffen. And von Schlieffen died in 1913, and his advice on his deathbed was to keep the right wing strong. So if you look at the northern part of that plan that I have on the screen now, where it goes through Brussels, what they intended was to scoot around Paris and capture Paris and end the war in 6 weeks. But that's not what happened. One of the armies that was marching through Brussels had turned too quickly and shown the French the flank, which is the side of the army. And that's where it starts to get a little bit hairy, and actually when the war actually begins. This is a war like none other. It was a mobile war at first and then became stagnant with the trenches. And I'm going to discuss those a little bit further in part 2. If you'd like to read some things on World War I could find some short articles and probably post them for you so that we know about the beginning of the war. The United States would not enter the war until April 6, 1917, after several incidents occurred, and I will get to those. So I'll see you later in part 2.